Trump campaign officials shove Arlington Cemetery official. There's a question mark there, but the behavior sounds about right when we're dealing with certain people. Former President Donald Trump traveled to the Arlington Cemetery to mark the anniversary of the 2021 Kabul airport terrorist attack. It claimed the lives of 13 United States military members. He laid a wreath in their honor. However, allegations have emerged that members of the Trump campaign verbally and physically abused a cemetery staff member in an altercation. Now, again, it sounds about right. But let's hear the rest of it. Let's wait before we make up our minds. According to NPR, which cited a source with knowledge of the incident, the two unnamed campaign officials allegedly got into a verbal and physical altercation with the cemetery official after the official attempted to stop them from filming and photographing in a section where recent U.S. casualties are buried. It's known as Section 60. Charlie Nash with the reporting. Now there's this: federal law prohibits, we should tell you, political campaign activities at all Army national cemeteries. That includes Arlington. It's just not allowed. Got to respect it. Trump campaign has hit back at the allegations, but didn't deny that an altercation took place. And if they did deny it, I mean, I don't know that that's on face value. We just believe it. But we are prepared to release footage if such defamatory claims are made. The fact is that a private photographer was permitted on the premises, and for whatever reason, an unnamed individual clearly suffering from a mental health episode decided to physically block members of President Trump's team during a very solemn ceremony. Stephen Chung, the Trump campaign spokesperson, a very professional spokesperson, accusing the unnamed individual of having some kind of mental health episode. And when you look at the footage and the pictures, I don't know that you could say it was a solemn occasion. And we're not talking about the family members. Okay, so let's give you more of this. After the Trump, why don't you just release the footage, by the way? Just release it. If you say someone's lying on you, that'll clear it right up, won't it? Media with the reporting there. Adding to the statement, campaign advisor Chris LaCivita telling the New York Times that the employee was a disgrace and does not deserve to represent the hallowed grounds of Arlington National Cemetery. So now you guys are the good guys, and the staffers who work there are the ones who need to go. Campaign has not issued the footage. We're waiting. In a statement issued to NPR, Arlington National Cemetery said, quote, "It can confirm there was an incident and a report was filed." Cemetery officials also said that they had issued explicit legal guidance that said federal law prohibits political campaign or election-related activities within Army National Military Cemeteries, to include photographers, content creators, or any other persons attending for purposes or in direct support of a partisan political candidate's campaign. Now, while this campaign has possibly just displayed massive disrespect to veterans everywhere, Trump has now added a well-known veteran to his transition team. It's official. Trump has added Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. to his transition team if he wins in November. Hell of a team. As President Trump's broad coalition of supporters and endorsers expands across partisan lines, we are proud that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard have been added to the Trump Vance transition team. Trump campaign senior advisor Brian Hughes said in a statement. Thank you to Reuters for providing that. In a breaking update today, Trump has been indicted by Jack Smith in the election crimes case. Smith is still charging Trump on the same 4 counts he was indicted on last summer: conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against rights. This latest indictment is meant to address the potential implications, if you will, of the Supreme Court's ruling, presidential immunity ruling, that is, earlier this year. So what this means, despite the Supreme Court's ruling regarding presidential immunity, these charges are for now sticking. Of course, there'll be a hearing. Judge Chutkan will have to decide. And then surely it'll go back to the U.S. Supreme Court woes because, you know, Trump is not going to leave it at that. But it looks like Jack Smith tried to thread a needle, go around some of this ruling that the Supreme Court of the United States handed down that carved out immunity for this one derelict individual. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, to address the situation at the cemetery where the veterans are buried, and an altercation happened, it's tough because you never really get a sense that Trump and his team, if you could even call it that, are like moving in unison. So on the one hand, it's like, yo, it's not as if they're getting a direct directive from the top. Is like, all right, here's what we're going in here to do. Here's how we're going to comport ourselves. This is what we do. Like it feels like they're never really moving on one accord, right? So like to say that Trump is like responsible for this, it's hard for me to imagine that there's this like top down edict that goes down and everybody just falls in line. At the same time, generally speaking, when we hear that there's mixed messaging or there's not a direct alignment within the campaign, it's coming from the bottom up, right? Like his cronies would be like, look, go out there, say a speech on the economy, stick to immigration, blah 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 blah, and then he'll start dissing the very popular governor in Georgia while he's in Georgia, right? But that's what I mean. Like usually it's Trump not listening to his underlings and not the reverse. So I'm not sure, but when you take his sort of history of having a general ambivalence and indifference towards veterans and how important they are and the deference we might should be showing these folks for their sacrifice for the country. Maybe his team is capable of taking that message to heart and being like, yo, we could do whatever we want in these
Yeah.
sentences, in these settings, excuse me. Now to these indictments being reopened, I think it's interesting, Sharon, in the sense that there seemed to be a feeling with all the different prosecutions that were happening around the country, like Biden was getting smoked. A lot of these court dates, the can got kicked down the road. Supreme Court ruled this guy was immune from criminal prosecution in his capacity as a president, although some of these charges had nothing to do with that. It seemed like all of the wind had left the sails of these prosecutions, but I think now that it looks like Trump like actually has a chance of losing, is game back on. Maybe I'm reading this wrong.
I don't know that you are. And I want to walk back to the cemetery, Arlington Cemetery, hallowed ground. I think that the staffers, who I actually believe, my opinion, did get into a physical altercation and pushed their way through and said, "You're not going to tell us what to do." We're taking their cues from their boss. He does what he wants. The rules don't apply to him. And by the way, this is no slight of the family. They can invite whoever they want. And I don't think that I agree with others on this network to judge in any way their behaviors, whatever. Their family member, they made the ultimate sacrifice. But to see Trump and his stupid thumbs up, okay, in Section 60, it's piggish behavior. And I know they did it. Again, my opinion, because look at the stupid statements they put out. Someone's having a mental health issue and this and that. What are you talking about, Mr. Chung? And why is that your spokesperson? Oh, yeah, that's your spokesperson, Woes, because that's what Trump likes. Push back, fight back. Even in the place where our bravest gave the ultimate sacrifice. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the statement, just to respond to that, like, I don't think we've ever seen Trump do anything but double down. Although sometimes he'll deflect, like when he was in that donors meeting and they were like, what are you going to do about like the unlikability and stuff? He's like, that's JD Vance. It's not me, right? He didn't double down and say, oh, they actually love JD Vance. He just deflected it. So
Yeah.
this is what we've come to expect. Like the idea that he's gonna handle himself with some level of decorum publicly. I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah, it has sailed. And it's again, there's one set of rules for everybody else. And now we're so used to it. Let me just say this and then button it this way. This is like a new one-day story of that. Because this is what Trump does. It's what we expect. The bar is so low, low, low. You can't see it anymore, huh? How much lower? It'll be buried.